This is the Economic Club of Florida, a distinguished platform for discussion of the major national issues of the day. On today's program, PortMiami Director Juan Kuryla on restarting passenger cruise line business as the coronavirus pandemic eases.
We want to do this in a safe manner. Nobody's saying, let's start cruising and make it unsafe. No, a key requirement for the CDC is to have a memorandum of agreement between the lines and the ports that show in the event of one case or in the event of 100 cases, how would you handle that case? What protocols do you have in place? Who's going to pay for the transportation from the ship to the hospital?
Good day and welcome to the 545th in our series of distinguished speaker programs. I'm Harvey Bennett for the Economic Club of Florida. We're honored today to have with us a man who has one of the most interesting jobs in Florida, especially right now. He's Juan Kuryla, Port Director and CEO of the Port of Miami. As you may imagine, he has been very busy working to restart the passenger cruise lines operating out of Port Miami, the largest cruise port in the world. So busy, in fact, that he was not able to sit for our pre-program interview, but he is here for his address to the club. So now, here's Doug Wheeler, immediate past president of the Florida Ports Council, with our formal introduction.
Juan Kuryla, he is the current Port Director and CEO at Port Miami. He's had a very long and distinguished career with Miami-Dade County, beginning back in the Parks Department back in 1987. He was then moved into the County Finance Department in 1993 as an administrative officer, where he oversaw a grant program funded by tourism tax dollars. About a year and a half after that, in the Finance Department, he took a position as a section head of the county's Public Works Department, specifically the Road, Bridge, and Canal Maintenance Division. So you can see where growth is coming. I'm sure that's a massive division of Miami-Dade County government. In 1996, Mr. Kuryla was promoted to work in the county manager's office as an assistant administrator, promoted again in 1998 to be the assistant to the port director at Port Miami. So this was his first foray into the port, where he remained for, I guess, about 20-something years. And there he oversaw the port's state, local, and federal legislative agendas. So as I'm sure you can imagine, quite a busy agenda for him. For the next 6 years, about February of 2001 to about 2007, he held a couple of positions, Assistant Port Director for Intergovernmental Affairs, as well as Assistant Port Director for Intergovernmental Affairs and Promotions. And then in 2007, he was promoted to Assistant Port Director for Maritime Services. So this is where he was involved as a co-lead negotiator for the port on all long-term agreements. I can assure you this is challenging. The cruise industry has a reputation for being very shrewd negotiators, so this was probably no easy task. But he executed these long-term contracts, anywhere from 10 to 20, some cases 30-year leases, with both cruise and cargo customers, and then as well as oversaw all the port operations. So that includes management, facilities, berthing, property management. Many of you don't know, but a lot of our ports really just act as landlords, these catalysts for commerce, if you will. So in 2009, he was promoted to Deputy Port Director. At that point, he was overseeing the other 5 Deputy Port Directors, Assistant Port Directors, in their respective positions. And then in May of 2013, he was promoted or designated as Port Director designee, much like our coach in waiting that many of you Seminoles are familiar with here in Tallahassee. But in 2014, then Mayor Carlos Jimenez appointed Mr. Kuryla to the position of Port Director at Port Miami. There he oversees basically all operations, capital development, which is a massive capital development program, certainly one of the largest in the state. In 2019, about 14 million passengers through and back came through our cruise terminals at Port Miami. They saw more than 2,200 ships berth, bringing us those products that we use every day in our home and business lives. And that includes, that 2,200 includes cruise vessels as well. This port and the activities surrounding the port supports more than 330,000 jobs. and has an economic impact of $43 billion. Mr. Kuryla holds a Bachelor of Business Administration as well as a Master's in Business Administration from Florida International University, and in 2010 got his Professional Port Manager designation and degree from the American Association of Port Authorities. I got to know Juan during my tenure as President and CEO of the Ports Council, working particularly close with Juan during his 2 years of chairman of the council. He is one of the most effective and well-respected port directors in the country. I can assure you of that. Overall, he's just a really nice guy, really great guy. And again, unfortunately, last minute business dictates that he's going to be joining us up there on the big screen where he is. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Juan Kuryla to the Economic Club of Florida.
Doug, first of all, thank you very much for that more than generous introduction. I got to tell you, I'm exhausted already, but thank you. You covered so many different areas, and but first of all, I want to thank in front of everybody. I want to thank Doug for the incredible job that he did with all of the ports in Florida for so many years. And I can tell you, Florida ports today, we are better off and better positioned than we were before Doug took the helm of the Florida Ports Council many years ago. So Doug, we consider Doug a friend of PortMiami, a personal friend. And I didn't know you were going to introduce me. So thank you. I really appreciate that. I also want to recognize a couple of folks out there today in the audience. Want to start with our Director of Intergovernmental Affairs and International Affairs, Deborah Owens, who's out there in the audience. Deborah, you're getting a nice round of applause. She definitely deserves it. She's there. We were scheduled to fly out last night. Then I had a situation where I had to stay back, but I'm really delighted to be here. Mike Rubin from the Florida Ports Council, he's there today, as well as Clark Jennings, who is the General Counsel for FMC Commissioner Lou Sola. Clark, thank you for being there. And I want to give a thank you to Marion Hoffman for coordinating this and extending the invite to us and for being here. So I want to talk a little bit today about seaports, and actually with Doug there and Mike there, you really don't need me to say anything about seaports. These guys know it all already. So I figured maybe I'd talk a little bit in detail about PortMiami, but yet still keep the conversation about the significance and the importance of seaports in the state of Florida. It really, isn't until you are directly touched by this industry that you realize how significant ports are. I think we all know how important an airport is, right? I think everybody in that room has been to an airport. I'll venture to say everyone in the room has. I'll bet almost my pension that everybody in that room has been on an expressway or a toll road and other great forms of infrastructure. But seaports are really, of course, we're biased on seaports, right? But they're just as important. About 95% of the products that you consume in this country are coming in via seaports in the United States. 95% of trade in total, imports and exports in and out of the United States are handled through America's ports. And I'm very, very happy to report to you that the state of Florida's ports is very strong. We have a great system of ports. We have incredible support from our governor, from our DOT secretary, and I have to tell you, whenever you see Kevin Tebow out there in Tallahassee walking around, don't be shy about coming up to him and saying, Mr. Secretary, thank you for what you've done personally for the ports in Florida. We have a very, very strong voice through our secretary, Kevin Tebow, in the state of Florida. And of course, he reports to the governor. And we later on in the presentation, I'll talk a little bit about how lucky, how blessed we, the Florida ports, have been during this session in terms of getting in line and very soon, hopefully, receiving allocations for support and for funding at our ports. So with that, I'm happy to start the presentation. And again, I really, before anything, I want to thank all of you. Really, thank you for the invitation and for hearing what we have to say, right? And I look forward to the Q&As afterwards. So that's a nice picture of our port. And somebody told me one day, actually the CEO of Seaboard Marine, who is our largest cargo carrier, he said, when we were investing, we constantly putting money in our port, said a port that is not building something is a port that is dying. And I gotta tell you, he's right. And so you see a picture of our port here with 6 Super Post-Panamax gantry cranes. We're ordering more, we're investing more. You see other ports in Florida doing it as well. So from time to time, I'll take the liberty of talking also about our colleagues at the Port of Jacksonville and the Port of Pensacola and Panama City and Port Everglades and the Port of Tampa and the Port Canaveral. We all work very nicely together in making Florida an attractive trade destination. Many times we are asked, you're competing with so-and-so and with that port. And I said, well, no, our competition, make no mistake about it. We, as a system of ports, we do everything to have business that is not coming to the state of Florida, come to the state of Florida, right? And they're great people in Savannah, but we want some of that cargo, just like they want some of our cargo, right? So, and the way we do it, how do we compete? We compete by continuously investing in our ports, state-of-the-art facilities for both cruise and cargo. And I think this picture says a lot. This picture shows some beautiful cruise terminals on the right side of the picture. And if you see that cruise ship that is somewhat on that, well, you see it on that dock cut out, right, towards the closer to the north end of the channel. In 3 years, that entire area is going to be cut, and you'll be able to have 3 more cruise ships, right, on the east side of the Port of Miami. And we do that thanks to great partnerships, great investment from our private sector partners. We do it thanks to great support from the federal government, the state government, from our mayor locally here, and our Board of County Commissioners. Without the elected leadership, I always say this when people ask, hey, Juan, how are you guys building this? How are you building that? Well, it's very simple, right? We, at the executive team, we put together a plan, but we can't execute. We cannot fund anything. Yeah, number one, if you don't have the money, right? But secondly, or even more importantly, if you don't have the political support. And here at the Port of Miami, we have been very, very fortunate. We've been blessed to have political support at the local level, state, and then when it comes to dredging and when it comes to some environmental permitting from the federal government as well. All right, so about the Port of Miami, Doug mentioned it in his opening. We have a $43 billion a year economic impact. We support more than 334,000 jobs, and those are direct, indirect, and induced jobs as a result of all of our actions and activities here at the Port of Miami. I'm not going to go through all the bullets. I'm sure everybody there can read faster than I can, right? So you can see for yourself more or less what it is. I'll try to hit on some of the key points, right? But a couple of words here that are important to me are global competitiveness. And that's what we're all about. That's what the state of Florida is all about. And that's what we strive for, right? We need to be able to compete as a system of ports. We need to be able to compete as our own individual ports. One characteristic that everybody's noticed, right? About ships. Ships can move, right? You don't provide a ship state-of-the-art infrastructure. You don't provide the ship a reliable labor, reliable workers, a reliable transportation mechanism to move goods from one place to another. Those ships will go away. Those ships will go somewhere else. And here's where we take our hats off, right, over the last 20 years to the Port of Savannah. Savannah has done an incredible job building distribution centers, improving their connectivity from the port. They are in the process of dredging to 50 feet or 48 feet. And that is why today you have, and Doug can correct me here, I forget the number, but probably close to 3.5, 4 million TEUs at the Port of Savannah. You see what we do later on in the presentation, but they do about 3 to 4 times what Miami does. Savannah alone, I want to say, does as many as the entire state of Florida in terms of containers. Why? There was great vision. They did a great job building the infrastructure, and today we see the fruit. When I came to the Port of Miami in 1998, right, Savannah was very close to us, just a little bit more than we were in terms of cargo throughput. Now, we have grown that. Jacksonville has done an incredible job growing their containers. So has Port Everglades. So has Tampa, Canaveral, right? So again, the point that I want to make is we as a state, our businesses, right, we need to be competitive in a global basis. For the past 6 years, you see some pretty nice benchmarks here for Port Miami. We are the second largest container port, second to Jacksonville, followed very closely by Port Everglades. And as a matter of fact, with Port Everglades, we've exchanged the number 2 position over the last few years. But here you see a trend. Now we have an upwards trend, a little bit of a dip in 17, but then up in 18, up in 19, and 2020, we had a dip as a result of the pandemic. The pandemic did cause a significant downturn last year during March, April, and May. All of our Asian imports went down. And then when the Asian imports started coming back, then we started feeling a slowdown with Latin America and the Caribbean, because they were lagging the pandemic 2 or 3 months. So by the time that Asian factories were reopening in May, factories in Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Costa Rica, all of Central America, right, they started shutting down. So they weren't manufacturing, thus we were not importing from them. With Latin America, it's very much a two-way market in terms of exports and imports, but we still had a very strong year. I'm going to say we were down probably 2.5%, 3% here during 2020. And for 2021, you see the outlook above on that chart. For 2021, we're looking at almost 1.2 million TEUs, and a TEU is a 20-foot equivalent unit of a container, right? So you see those containers out on the road. If it's 20 feet, it's 1 TEU. If it's 40 feet, it's 2 TEUs. And if it's 45 feet, it's 2.25 TEUs in terms of how we handle the statistics. But you see, right, now for 2021, which we finished in September of this year, September 30, our projection is that we'll be almost at 1.2 million TEUs, which will be a record year for the Port of Miami. Below, you'll recognize some of these names when you're driving through the highway. You'll see these containers. All of these are foreign companies, right? Except for Seaboard Marine's parent, the Seaboard Corp, based here in Kansas in the United States. And so business is coming from all over the world. These companies are not only foreign, but they are bringing products to the state of Florida from the Asia Pacific rim. They're bringing products from Northern Europe. They're bringing products through the Med. They're bringing products from India and that region, and they're bringing products from Latin America and the Caribbean, to and from. Cargo traffic records, not going to bore you with some details, but January of this year was the busiest month ever in the history of the Port of Miami. And that was just a short 8 months after the pandemic started. We are very happy and believe we're seeing similar results also in terms of throughput at our other ports here in the state of Florida. Business is good. Business is good as it relates to trade. Maybe what we say, a lot of people didn't go on vacation last summer, or they couldn't go on vacation last summer, right? So what did they do? Right? They went out and they bought more furniture, or they bought more TVs, more consumer goods. They did home improvements. Home Depot was popping last summer. Home Depot and Lowe's, right? They're doing very well. People are buying, and people are investing in their homes, and people are buying more commodities, more food, right? This is America. At the end of the day, we buy things here, and we love our consumer economy. And again, we saw growth from Asia and Latin America. In Europe, we saw a little bit of a decrease, though we started seeing heavier volumes, more tile, more marble, more home products. So how do we grow, right? We grow, we were saying, with investments, and we grow with the private sector. This is a project what we call the South Florida Container Terminal Improvement Project. Just recently, they opened new gates with appointment systems, and it was like night and day. You open appointment systems to the truckers, you give them that type of customer service, and all of a sudden the lines went down, the backups went down, and it just provides a much better experience, customer-oriented, customer-friendly experience at the cargo gates. And this was a project that was co-funded by the port, by the state, with some state funding, and by the private sector. So everybody had a little bit of skin in the game, and it was done on record time here at the port. Just recently, and one of the great things that the state of Florida has done and always supported PortMiami and its other ports is the following, right? We were able to dredge to 50 feet. As a result of dredging to 50 feet, guess what? We were able to have the largest container ship ever in the history of Florida call here in PortMiami last April. So I'll show you a very quick video of that.
So at 6, all hands on deck at PortMiami today following the arrival of the largest container ship to ever make its way to the port. The CMA CGM Argentina arrived just after 9 a.m. It is the length of 3 football fields. The larger container ships will be helping to speed up the shipping process at the port.
It also helps the community. All of these ships bring in cargo from all over the world, TVs, refrigerators, anything that you consumers buy, we bring in through these ships. I've seen quite a growth in this port, and it really is amazing. I never thought I'd see a ship like this come in here.
Quite a sight right there. Baker says the vessel will also generate more jobs for drivers, loaders, and create more opportunities at PortMiami.
Great. So what does that mean? I think that the key take, at least for me, right, and everybody is always very interested in jobs, right? And we heard Mark say and Elio Rodriguez, a reporter, talk about jobs. This means more jobs. It means more economic impact. It means a better quality of life. And that's what ports throughout the state of Florida really try to emphasize. So I know Mike is listening, and that will continue to be a great mission of the Florida Ports Council to put that word out. Ports, successful ports, mean jobs, all kind of jobs. Some stats here: the import-export activity generates a state income, right, of about $10 billion, and state and local taxes of $2 billion. So not only jobs, but revenues to different government entities. Now we go to the cruise side. Has maybe a show of hands. I see some people. How many of you know that cruises have not been sailing for 14 months? Yeah. And really, and I say this in a very serious tone, we appreciate you noticing, because that has had a detrimental impact on the cruise port. We have five cruise ports, 3 real large ones, 2 mid-size, and actually a smaller one, a port of call in Key West. And all 6 of us have suffered. in varying degrees depending on what percentage of revenue the cruise operations was. For Miami, it was 60%. For Canaveral, it was 80%, right? I might speak out of school here, but for Port Everglades, it was 40-45. Tampa maybe 12%, 15%, and Jacksonville maybe 8%. But nonetheless, 8% of millions is millions. And that is a revenue shortfall that we as ports in your state have had every single month for the past 14 months. In addition to that, right, and we're very fortunate, we work for a large organization. We're part of Miami-Dade County, a very large government with over $9 billion a year in its annual budget. So we're fortunate. The thousands of folks that have been laid off, that have not worked in 14 months because of this stoppage, that is an incredibly unfortunate part. We have friends in every industry, in every parts of the ecosystem that support the cruise industry that have not been able to work yet, as cruising will slowly restart. In the state of Florida, there's about 140,000 people that generate their income as a result of the cruise industry. Miami-Dade County alone, Port Miami, it's about 42,000 people. The numbers that you have on the screen, they represent the number of passengers that we processed in Miami. So if you look at the numbers, we've been trending up very strongly since 2015. And why? Right? As a result of great capital infrastructure projects. The reason why we're able to jump the way we jumped is because there was a little project called the Port Miami Tunnel, right? Where the state provided an immense amount of funding, and not only the funding for the capital, but the availability payments for the following 30 years for the O&M of that tunnel. Without that tunnel, we never would have been able to handle this volume of passengers, nor the growth in cargo that we've had. So again, my point is investment. The investment not only generates jobs while the investment is being constructed, the investment generates jobs for the lifetime of that investment. And here, you see the dip. You see the dip from 2019 to 2020. Why? Because we stopped in the middle of the year. We stopped March 15 of 2020. And we continue, we would have broken 7 million in 2020. 2021, the outlook, we have budgeted 0. We're hoping to start in July of this year, July of August, with a very measured approach. So hopefully we'll have some numbers, and we're being very cautious for the following year, for 21-22, of only budgeting half of what we would have likely had the pandemic not existed, or if we still had not. If we still were not going through the pandemic, right? And we're fortunate to have the lines that you see below. Every major line calls the Port of Miami. Most of these lines also call Canaveral and Tampa and Jacksonville and Port Everglades. So we are in it together as a system of ports, as a government. They're individual local governments, but as a state government, we're in it together to restart this very, very important industry to our state called the cruise industry. And here are some of the impacts, right, of the no sail order. 500,000 Americans, right? 500,000 Americans. In the state of Florida, it's a little bit, it's about a third of those people not working, just right here in the state of Florida. So I'm going to take you through very quickly the progression of this no sail order, where we are, and some timelines that we feel are important, that we feel are what we learned a lot from. And we're going to get back and sailing very soon, we hope. Going back, we love statistics, right? And you can read them, and that's true. 7 billion a year right here in our county, in Miami-Dade County, right? And 40,000 jobs right here out of this little port. And then you multiply that times the 6 Florida ports that do cruise business, and it's bad. You can't downplay this. It is what it is. That's why we need to get back, and we need to get back soon. We get heated, we get very passionate here in Miami over this, just like they get very passionate over cruise everywhere in the state. This is something that needs to come back, ladies and gentlemen, and needs to come back very soon. The restart efforts, we know the governor recommended, thank you, Governor DeSantis, $260 million in relief effort for ports. At the end of the day, it looks like it's $250 million after it went through the legislature. Thank you, legislature, for approving $250 million that now will be split among the ports. I know our Secretary, Kevin Thibault, is working very hard on an equitable distribution process, depending on how much ports have lost, right? And the volume of cruise activity at our ports over the last 14 months, 12 months. So we're very, very happy with that. Our mayor on April 1 reached out to Dr. Rochelle Walensky to inquire about the cruise restart and the safe return. We want to do this in a safe manner. Nobody's saying, let's start cruising and make it unsafe. No. And even before the pandemic, I have to tell you, I can't remember going to many places and every 10 feet having somebody offer me hand sanitizer. Well, that was happening in cruise ships already. So here we are, right? From April 1, April 2, we start doing more and more. We start working with a new face of the CDC's conditional sail order. That dialogue improves, right, tremendously. There is dialogue back and forth between the ports and the CDC, the cruise lines, and the CDC. We're working with our hospitality partners. A key requirement for the CDC is to have a memorandum of agreement between the lines and the ports that show, in the event of one case or in the event of 100 cases, how would you handle that case? What protocols do you have in place? Who's going to pay for the transportation from the ship to the hospital? Who's going to pay for that, for the hospital care? So all of these issues have been resolved, and we're very happy to tell you that we've either completed all of them or will be completing all of them by the end of this week. Other restart efforts, we want to thank our Florida senators, Marco Rubio and Rick Scott, as well as Senator Sullivan, right, for introducing the Cruise Act last month, and of course our congressional delegation, Maria Elvira Salazar, Carlos Jimenez, Federica Wilson, and the reason, and we also had incredible help. I need to say this from our Commissioner Lou Sola, right, from the FMC, and we'll talk about some of the FMC efforts later in the presentation. And where do we start? Where do we stand now? There's an interagency working group comprised of the CDC, the White House, reps from the cruise industry, and also other departments of the federal government, so that we can actually have a coordinated initiative. Congresswoman Federica Wilson, Congressman Ted Deutsch, you know some of these folks. They contacted the White House on behalf of their entire constituency. The longshoremen are very, very important. We cannot do what we do here in the state of Florida without our longshoremen, the ILA, right? And on behalf of transportation operators, hotel and restaurateurs, retail workers, right? These are all the people that are suffering financially, that have not been employed for 14 months. There's been no other industry that I'm aware of, right? No other industry that has been shut down. Yes, some were closed, some for a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks. Others were allowed to reopen, but the cruise industry has been shut down. But we really see now a light at the end of this tunnel. We see great dialogue with the CDC, with the industry, with everyone that needs to come to the table for a restart. And Clark, you're there. You know all the work that you've done You know the work that the commissioner has done, and the commissioner was responsible for fact-finding investigation number 30, the impact of COVID on the cruise industry. And I have to tell you, the amount of work that the FMC, led by Commissioner Sola, with the great assistance of Clark Jennings, resulted on I think, a very, very successful mission, putting all of this out there, letting all of our legislators know about this impact, and ultimately a letter was sent, I want to say yesterday, to President Biden on this initiative. So thank you, FMC. Thank you, Commissioner Sola. CLIA, our partner, the Cruise Lines International Association, they've been at the crux of all of the restart efforts in Washington with every agency, and they're being successful. Global restart efforts, right? So, and here is something that you might have heard in the news lately, news about cruise lines leaving the state of Florida to start elsewhere. Let me tell you something. They might be doing that as an interim basis, but cruise lines love the state of Florida. They want to be back. They want to sail from the state of Florida, any of our ports here in Florida. And I commend all the port directors for their constant involvement with the cruise lines and all of their efforts to be able to restart new home port destinations, the Bahamas, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Bermuda, St. Martin's also. Now, guess who's going on those cruise ships? Americans, right? Americans are flying to these destinations to get on those vessels at these different home ports. So part of our conversation is, these are Americans regardless, they're gonna come back to America. So let's just keep them in America and let's have them start the home porting right here in the United States, preferably in Florida, right? So that's part of our argument, that's part of our conversation. And I tell you, folks, it's being heard. Cruising started in other parts of the world without any incidents, without a major breakthrough. I think on over 600,000 people that they moved in Europe, only 50 cases, 50 different isolated cases that were treated and handled pursuant to the protocol, and boom, everything's going well there. Wrong key. All right.
This new terminal is just...
Oh, wait. Okay, so during the pandemic, we didn't stop, right? We didn't stop. We kept on with our mission of moving forward with all revenue, future revenue generating projects. Since that time, we have broken ground on 2 terminals, and one is Terminal B for Virgin Voyages. So Richard Branson is bringing his ships here to Miami, and one of them will be here now in August, and we're opening a terminal for them in November. So I'm going to show you that video and the video of the great expansion for Carnival Corporation, so that they can bring their largest ship ever built right here to Florida, to Port Miami in November of 2022.
This new terminal is just sign positive that we are ready to get back to business as soon as we get this pandemic under control, and you will see new jobs, new tourism, new excitement right here at Port Miami.
Okay, so that was our mayor, Daniela Levine Cava, talking about, again, a recurring theme, right? Something that benefits all of us: jobs, construction, investment, development, which is so critical to our growth. The growth of all the Florida ports, and really the growth of Florida. And I'll show you now our chairman of the board talking about the expansion of Terminal F for Carnival Corporation.
What it means to our community is jobs. And jobs are very important, especially coming after this COVID-19 pandemic that we're trying to pull out of.
We appreciate and understand the economic benefits that the cruise industry brings to this community for individuals and businesses alike. So we are very grateful for all the support from Port Miami and from the community.
And that was, of course, Christine Duffy, the president of Carnival Cruise Line. With your back to you is our county attorney, Steve Bass. He has your back to the picture there, and we always tell him, don't Don't face the picture, Steve. Let's do your legal. And with one more project, did I miss something? Oh, this is another one. Sorry. So definitely something that we do not want to miss is the MSC project. And this is something that is very interesting because, again, we're going to have a substantial amount of a private sector component in this $500 million project. The MSC, Mediterranean Shipping Company, which is the second largest cargo company in the world, the fourth largest cruise company in the world, they will build, finance, operate, and maintain a facility, and you see it there on the screen, that will be able to accommodate 3 ships at the same time from 2 different lines. And this, we're going to have the groundbreaking later this summer and with a completion date of the fall of 2023. We're very proud of that. The county will have about a 20% investment component here, but the lion's share will be paid by private funds through MSC. One final project, I know it's running late, something that we're starting new here at the Port of Miami. It's been done at other ports on the West Coast of the United States. It's been done in Europe. Is our efforts to work with the industry and work with different private interests as well on reducing our carbon footprint. And we know vessels are going the LNG route. A lot of them are also shore power ready. If they're not, some of them, the new ones, will be in the future. And we're in the process of starting to connect shore power to our berths here at the Port of Miami. We signed an MOU with all of the lines that you see below there I think it was in February of this year. And we're all currently working towards cleaner air and making just the environment a much, much more beautiful place. So with that, I want to sign off and thank all of you for your time. Thank you.
Mr. Kuryla, are you prepared to maybe take a few questions?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Okay.
No, absolutely.
Okay, we've already got one. Dominic, go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for pivoting to give a great presentation on the important work of the ports, generally and specifically the Port of Miami. What a great asset to not only the state of Florida, but I think our nation. Question, and it's not rhetorical, it's really legitimate. How do we balance, particularly for the cruise industry, the notion of legally prohibiting passports, show that you've gotten vaccinated, with some of the demands at some ports? Now, there are exemptions in law for healthcare facilities, nursing homes and like. Maybe that might be a middle ground where you can balance that issue of safety and personal freedom.
No, thank you. And that definitely is a great question. That is a topic that has been getting some discussion in the news. And of course, there are differences of opinion. What we're trying to do is, as a port authority and working with a cruise line, we're trying to do the parts that we control, that we here at the port, and that is having these agreements, this restart agreements, fully executed with the lines, so that once that issue is settled, and I'm a believer that's going to be settled I think in the near future, that we're ready to go. We as port executives, we don't sometimes have control over things that happen outside of our ports, right? Or policies or different topics. But what I can tell you is that we are ready to go. We at Port Miami, and I'll speak for my colleagues and my friends at other ports. If you talk to John Murray or Eric Green at Jacksonville, John Murray at Canaveral, we've all been moving on parallel tracks here with all of our lines to be ready as soon as we are allowed to proceed.
Okay, one last question, Mr. Kuryla. And I don't know if you can really talk about this, but can you share with us anything about any security protocols? For example, how do you know that when a cargo ship is coming into the port that there's not something on the hull of the ship that could be a danger to the port. Can you share anything about that, or is that classified?
So I can share a little bit. I can tell you that here at Port Miami, ships are inspected by divers, right? When you're coming alongside, you do have divers, you do have MDPD escorts, you do have Coast Guard escorts. Now, is it always? I can't tell you that it's always, nor can I tell you for security reasons what percentage. But rest assured that your federal agencies, right, your Customs and Border Protection, your United States Coast Guard, they have a very good pulse on these security matters when it comes to vessels coming from international waters to U.S. waters, and then of course subsequently to our docks.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Kuryla, for your comments and your insight today. This has been very educational and informational, and we appreciate you sending Deborah up here. And we'll chat with her some and the rest of the team at the Florida Ports Council. But thank you so much, and wish you could have been here, but we understand how important it is for you to remain there and do your job. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Juan Kuryla, Port Director and CEO of the Port of Miami, speaking before the Economic Club of Florida on May 20th, 2021 in Tallahassee, Florida. For more information on Port Miami, visit miamidade.gov/Port Miami. The Economic Club of Florida promotes interest and enlightenment on important economic, political, and social issues of the day. To learn more, including how to become a member, visit our website at economic-club.com. This program was recorded at the Florida State University Alumni Center in Tallahassee, Florida.